Alright, I'm in. I'm officially part of the custom keyboard building community, and I did this. Hey everyone, welcome back to Hardwired Review. I am Nate, and over the past couple weeks, I've been working on a little project that has involved this custom keyboard. This is my custom optical gaming keyboard. I know that's kind of a long name, but it has optical switches and I plan to use it for gaming. I took a keyboard that I previously had just lying around that was hot swappable. I took out the terrible switches that were originally in it. I replaced them, I lubed them, I did a ton of mods, and what came out of this whole thing was a keyboard that sounded pretty darn good for around $30 that I've been gaming on for the past couple days and I actually really like. Before this, I had never really done anything related to custom keyboard building, but I knew that needed to change. I saw a lot of cool videos about it and I said, hey, I can do that. I thought it'd be interesting for somebody who had no experience to see the build process from someone who also had no experience, a noob like me. And so I made a video detailing how I modded and how I kind of took this really bad keyboard and turned it into something great for only around $30. And if I can do the whole thing without pretty much any problems, then you can definitely do it too. All the products that I'm going to mention in this video will be linked down below so you can check them out. And with that, let's just jump right in. First things first, let me introduce you to the unlucky test subject for this keyboard building operation. This is my $70 hot swappable Apple Maker SK61, which I got to review around a year ago, and I'm going to be doing quite a few mods to help with the original terrible sound that this keyboard has. Even though the sound is terrible, and you will be hearing a sound test of this keyboard shortly, so prepare your ears for that, I actually did like all of the features that ended up coming with the SK61. It's hot swappable, it has N-key rollover, anti-ghosting, it also has a really good case, but it has noisy non-lube switches and plate mounted stabilizers that need a lot of work, so that's the reason for all the mods that I'm going to be doing in this video. The main change in this whole process is I'm going to be replacing those terrible Gateron optical blues. And I'm going to be replacing them with Gateron optical yellows, which are much smoother, and they kind of remind me of butter, and they also feel like that too. I ended up paying $27 for 70 of these. They have a 1mm actuation, 3.2mm of total travel distance, 35 grams of operating force required, and they offer a low effort typing experience that after lubing them and doing everything, I think really sounds good. And I'm going to be showing you everything I did to turn this into a really good sounding keyboard. Let's get into the build process. So the first thing I did was I tore off all the keycaps and I took off all of the old terrible sounding Gateron optical blues. This took me quite a while, but the reason for that is I was using a terrible keycap and switch remover that was making my hand cramp up. It was really painful, but I pushed through it. And after tearing off all the switches, I put in the new Gateron optical yellows. If you're wondering why I haven't done any other mods thus far, it's because I just wanted to hear what the optical yellows would sound like with no lube and no other additional things that I had done to either the stabilizers or adding any absorption to the actual case. So after putting the switches in, I put back on the keycaps, and here's a sound test of just the optical yellows straight out of the box. Nothing changed at all. So they definitely sound better than the pre-installed optical blues that this keyboard came with, but they still sound terrible. The stabilizers sound like trash. It's very echoey. There's no sound absorption material in the keyboard at all. And if I shake the keyboard, you'll hear the springs of the switches, which is, it's disgusting. This keyboard was nowhere where I wanted it to be at this point in time, so I continued on the modding process. I took off all the switches, all the keycaps once again, but this time I started doing some more in-depth modifications. I decided to buy lube, a foam dampener that goes on top of the PCB, and rubber O-rings. The rubber O-rings will make the travel distance even shorter, so the switches don't bottom out. With more noisy switches, it can make them sound better, but you also get this very shallow feeling typing experience, which I'm not a fan of, so I'll be only using this if the keyboard sounds really bad. This is kind of like a last resort type thing. I started by clipping the stabilizer tabs. I watched a Taya Types video on this and it seemed to help with the stabilizer noise, but these stabilizers were worse than pretty much every other pre-installed stabilizer on a pre-built keyboard I've ever heard. So while it helped out a little bit, I think a lot more needed to be done. Another thing I decided to do was adding a Bandaid where the wire of the stabilizer contacts the PCB, and this hopefully absorbed the stabilizer hitting the PCB, thus dampening the sound. And as you'll hear in the sound test, I think it did do a decent job at that. I also attempted the Holee mod, I believe it's called. That didn't work. Essentially, that's where you try to feed tape into the stabilizer where the actual wire goes into the stabilizer. It's kind of hard to explain. It's supposed to kind of dampen the sound and make it so the wire doesn't rattle around as much, but this didn't work and the tape ended up falling out, probably because I wasn't using the right tape, but all I had was duct tape, so, I had to do what I had to do. Now the next mod worked really well. I saw this video where you add pennies to the bottom of your case and then tape over them with duct tape. This will add weight to the keyboard, giving it a more premium feel, while at the same time it'll dampen a lot of the noise. While this did work very well, it made the keyboard rattle a bit when I shook it. You can kind of hear it here, but when you're actually using the keyboard, it doesn't show up at all, so it's not a big deal or anything. But I probably should have super glued the pennies in because just the tape itself won't really help the pennies from moving around. The last thing I did with the stabilizers at least was I decided to lube them, and I also reinstalled them and tested them out. I used the same lube that I was going to be using on the switches, which was G205, which was not thick enough at all. I probably needed dielectric grease. In fact, I definitely did, but it was the only thing I had on hand, and I didn't feel like buying two different types of lube, considering that I wanted to make this as budget as possible and stay around the $30 range. It ended up making the stabilizers sound a lot better, so the backspace, the enter, and the shift, and the space bar weren't so terrible. The last and the final mod is, well, it's not really a mod, it's just what you're supposed to do, but I decided to lube my optical yellows. This is something you're supposed to do, but I was trying to avoid it. I was hoping that just swapping out the switches from the blues, because the blues were so bad, that I would just be fine with the optical yellows plain and just out of the box, but I wasn't. I knew it was going to be a very grueling task because you have to take apart every single switch, and this keyboard has around 60 switches in it, so I knew it was going to take quite a long time. It didn't actually end up taking that long, and it was actually kind of a cool process, very calming. I listened to Minecraft music when I did it and just chilled. I applied way too much lube though, and I saw a lot of videos saying that you do not need to put as much on as you think you do. But I was scared I wasn't going to put enough on and I would have to redo the process, so I just went gun-ho with it. This was not the best idea, but I wanted to be better safe than sorry. I ended up not being sorry. I kind of like the sound of semi-overlubed switches, so it ended up turning out just fine. And with the lubing process pretty much done, I kind of sat back and relaxed and was like, it's finally here. The time has finally come to put all the parts back together and kind of hear what the end result of this whole process is, and hopefully it's a blessing to my ears and doesn't make them bleed. It did not make my ears bleed. This keyboard sounds so good. So yeah, this whole process was incredibly insightful. I learned pretty much everything that I've ever learned about building custom keyboards throughout the past couple of weeks, going through everything that I needed to create the best custom mechanical keyboard for $30. And I think I achieved that goal above and beyond what I ever imagined. And for all you out there who are tempted to get into custom mechanical keyboard building, obviously you're not going to buy the Apple Maker SK61 and do exactly what I did. However, there's a lot of great guides out there, and I will be linking some products such as the case and the PCB that are going to be hot swappable, so you can easily build your own mechanical keyboard. Kind of follow my guide, learn from my mistakes. I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope it was interesting in some way. It was definitely a great experience for me building this keyboard for gaming and having it be be my first custom mechanical keyboard build. It definitely will not be my last. Obviously, I will change some things in my future builds now that I know what to do and what not to do. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't worry, I'm not going to become a keyboard channel. That's not the future of Hardwired Review. But however, I will be putting out some content occasionally about keyboards because I do like them. But I will make sure it pertains to gaming and, PC content in some way. I do have some PC content coming out very soon, so do stay tuned for that. And with that said, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. I'm Nate from Hardwired Review, and I'll see you later. Peace.